Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for September 24th, 2017. On today's show, at the water cooler, I'll talk about visiting Knott's Scary Farm for the first time ever. And because there's just no news going on, we're going to be going through Chris Evangelista's top 10 movies of all time. And joining me today on the show is Chris. How's it going, Chris?
All right, how are you?
I'm doing good. Last night, I visited Knott's Scary Farm for the first time. Do you have any idea what that is?
I know of it. I've never been there, but I'd love to go someday.
Yeah, a lot of these theme parks around Halloween time do this kind of like a Halloween version. I talked the other day about Disneyland does Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. And right. Also, I've talked previously about Universal does their Halloween Horror Nights. And it's kind of like more like that, where there's a bunch of mazes that you get to enter and be scared. And I didn't know what to expect because I've been to Knott's many times. Knott's is kind of like, not when you're going to Southern California to go to a theme park, it's the third theme park on your list.
Really?
So it's not the number one theme park that you look forward to. But I've never been to their Scary Farm, and I'm impressed. They actually outdid Universal Studios in a lot of respects, having a lower budget and not having these, huge movie IPs. I just want to mention two of them, and I'll have an article on the site next week comparing all three events. But the things I was amazed at the most is there's this maze called Infected, and you are equipped with a machine gun. Everybody's equipped with a machine gun, and it's kind of like a laser tag machine gun, and you enter a zone infected by zombies, and you're escorted by like a team leader who's like a military persona, and there's like a downed helicopter. There's smoke and just zombies coming out of the darkness, and you got to shoot them. And when you shoot them, they actually die, and your gun counts it as a kill. So it's like a real life first person shooter. And you're running through this, and you're going from like street level to like you go down into the metro line, and you're on the train, and it's so much fun. Like,
wow,
yeah, a lot of fun.
Sounds very elaborate.
It was extremely elaborate. I was so impressed at how much production value was in this thing. And at the end of the thing, you get to see how many zombies you killed. And my girlfriend Kitra beat me by doubling my score. So I'm not good at killing zombies. If zombies take over the world, I will be hiding behind her. Another one of the cool mazes, the second I just wanted to talk about, is called Dark Ride, and it was basically themed after, like, it was a dark ride, like one of those rides that you sit in a vehicle, like Haunted Mansion or something like that, but it has been broken down and, not been used for years, and basically these hellish clowns have taken it over. And it was just a lot of fun for a theme park fanatic like me. It was fun to walk through this thing that's set up like, it's a broken down theme park ride, and to have all sorts of evil, crazy clowns jumping out at you from all sorts of different respects. And the last other thing I wanted to say is walking around these parks like Halloween Horror Nights and Knott's Scary Farm. They have these things called scare zones, which are basically like the general areas that you're walking through to get to the next ride or maze. And it's usually like they have people in costumes and masks like coming up to scare you. And I've always been impressed with Universal's, but wow, Knott's does it better. Like the characters, talk, and they really do some crazy. Some of them have like these. I don't know what it is, but they have these costumes on them that they can basically run and jump in front of you, and then sparks go flying from their like feet and stuff, and it's really scary and crazy, and I highly recommend it. It's actually a pretty cheap ticket comparatively to Disney and Universal. And again, next week I will have an article rounding up all three events and telling you what is better at what and what I enjoyed overall more. So you'll have to look forward to that. But let's get to our feature presentation, what everybody is here for. and that is to hear Chris's favorite movies of all time. Whenever we have a new writer come on staff at Slash Film, we always have them post their top 15 movies. The top 15 favorite movies, I should say, because maybe this isn't your top 15 movies, but it's your favorites.
Yeah.
And usually it's a good indication to give someone an indication of your personality and film likes and dislikes, and maybe even tell you something about this writer, Chris. So let's start on the site. We have all 15. You can go to slashfilm.com. Readers can read it all. We're just going to go through the top 10. So if you want to read, 14 through 15, 11 through 15, go to slashfilm.com. We'll link it in the show notes. But let's start out at number 10, Haywire. Why is Haywire number 10?
It's yeah. So as you said, this list isn't necessarily what I consider the best movies ever be made, but these are the films that I love the most. And Haywire, it's a Steven Soderbergh film, and I don't even think it's Steven Soderbergh's best movie, but it's so much fun. I don't know, this is one of those movies I can literally watch pretty much any time. Literally any week I could watch this movie. And it's just it's the type of movie that people like Chuck Norris and Jean-Claude Van Damme used to make in the 90s, but it's done as sort of like if someone took that idea and made it into an indie film, it would be Haywire. And I just sort of love how silly that idea is, but it's played completely straight. And I don't know, it's an exciting film. It has some of like the best fight scenes I've ever seen in a movie. And, Soderbergh isn't typically an action director, but he directs action better than most action directors now. So I just sort of love this movie. It's a lot of fun.
This is one of the only films on your list I have not seen yet. So it's a shame on me. I'm going to have to add this to my Letterboxd must-see list or much-watch, whatever they call it, and definitely get to this. I don't know why I've been putting it off. Steven Soderbergh, for me, has been very hit or miss. He does a lot of experimental kind of stuff that either connects or not connects with me.
Right.
So for some reason or another, I think I saw a trailer for this and I wasn't super excited. But your description of it makes me interested.
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
A film I haven't seen in many years is The Conversation, and that's number 9 on your list.
Yes.
Why is that number 9 on your list?
So again, I don't even think this is Coppola's best film, the Francis Ford Coppola, but it's the one I connect with the most. It's this very low key, I don't want to say slow, but it's deliberately paced. And he made this between The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. So it's sort of like these two big epic movies, and then he has this very small personal film. And Gene Hackman is just so good in this he's a surveillance expert, and he's kind of a jerk, and he's just like, he's not your typical movie hero. And, but he's this very paranoid surveillance expert, and he accidentally records something that he thinks is going to lead to a murder. And the whole movie is him basically trying to figure out if he's, overanalyzing it, if the murder's really going to happen, if he can prevent the murder. And I don't know, there's something about this movie. It's very sad and melancholy. And I tend to gravitate towards movies like that. Make of that what you will, but there's something about that I really like. And especially for Coppola, he doesn't really make movies anymore, but he used to make very big sort of movies. And this is very small for him. And that's sort of what I really liked about it.
Yes. Is Coppola not making movies anymore? Because he made that very experimental film Twixt a few years back, right?
That's true. He made that, and I don't like that at all. So I tend to block that from my memory that he made that. But yeah, that's sort of like the last thing he's made. He hasn't made anything in a while.
It's funny how people like Coppola and George Lucas have kind of taken the reverse route of the normal filmmaker, where they're in their later years creating the experimental film school movies, and their earlier years were creating the big blockbuster epics.
Yeah, it's true. It's like the complete reversal of what happens now, where people start small and they work their way up. They literally started within the studio system.
Yeah. Number 8 on your list, Roadhouse. This is actually surprising.
Really?
Yeah, I wouldn't picture you to be a person who had Roadhouse in their top 10. So why do you like Roadhouse?
I feel like if you don't like Roadhouse, there's something wrong with you. That might be a weird thing to say, but like Roadhouse is so much fun. It's like the primordial trash movie. It's
you know what? We should probably explain what Roadhouse is. I'm not sure if most people out there would have seen Roadhouse at this point.
So Roadhouse it's a very 80s film where Patrick Swayze is the world's greatest bouncer. Basically, like everyone in the world knows what a good bouncer this guy is, and people come from far and wide to recruit him to be their bouncer. And a guy comes to him and says, he runs this bar, and he says, "I need you to help clean up my bar." So Patrick Swayze, he packs up, he moves to this small town, and he cleans up both the bar and the town. It's almost like a Western, but it's a very 80s Western where he's cleaning up the town and everyone's got big hair and acid wash jeans, and it's so stupid. There's nothing in this movie that's that intelligent, but I just love how fully committed it is to its dumb idea, and it's just great, and it's surprisingly like violent at times, like in ways you wouldn't expect, where Patrick Swayze is literally like ripping people's throats out with his bare hands, and it comes out of nowhere. And I don't know, I just remember I saw this movie after hearing about it in like a joking way, where people would just joke about how trashy Roadhouse was. So I sat down and watched it, and I was blown away, because sometimes you hear about movies that that the so bad it's good movie, and I was expecting something like that, but I legitimately enjoy this film. I don't enjoy it in like this ironic way. I really love watching Roadhouse.
And going from one Patrick Swayze movie to another Patrick Swayze movie, number 7 on your list is Point Break, which I hope our listeners would have seen. But and if you haven't seen it and you saw Fast and the Furious, imagine a better version of that, directed by Catherine Bigelow.
Exactly.
With surfers and
Right.
So why is Point Break on your list? I mean, why wouldn't it be? But
exactly.
Yeah.
And sort of Point Break is sort of the opposite of Roadhouse, whereas it seems like a dumb idea, but it's actually a really smart movie. I mean, it's as smart as a movie about, bank robbing surfers can be, and Catherine Bigelow is such a good director. And this isn't her first movie, obviously, but it's one of her earlier films. And she directs the hell out of this thing, where every scene is just made with this precision that very few filmmakers can match, let alone top. And it's this high octane, high adrenaline. It's almost like this subversive love story where Keanu Reeves' character, he's this FBI agent undercover, and he's really drawn to Patrick Swayze's character, he runs this, bank robbing ring. And in my write-up, I compare it to The Master, whereas you have Joaquin Phoenix's character drawn to Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in that film, but it's this destructive relationship. That's sort of what Point Break is. It's like The Master, but with surfing. That's how I describe it.
How did it take, 25 years for the public to fall in love with Catherine Bigelow? I mean, I feel like we should have saw Point Break, and it should have just happened right away.
It's so good. She's so good, and I wish she would make more. I mean, she just had Detroit out, and that was her first movie since Zero Dark 30, and that was such a long gap. It's straight. She's the only female director to win a Best Director Oscar, which is for one level that speaks to how messed up the Hollywood system is, because she should have been the first one, but the fact that she is and yet doesn't. Sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to say, not only that, she beat out her ex-husband,
right?
James Cameron, who had Avatar that year.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's weird that she doesn't make more movies. I wish she would. Then again, I guess it makes them more special that, she makes only one every few years. So I'm hoping, I don't think Detroit really did that well, but I'm hoping she has another film sooner rather than later.
For sure. Number 6 on your list is a Stanley Kubrick movie, but it's not the Stanley Kubrick movie I would be expecting on your list. It is Barry Lyndon. Why?
Which one would you expect? The Shining? Is that?
Yeah, maybe The Shining. I feel like most people gravitate towards The Shining or A Clockwork Orange. Barry Lyndon, I don't really hear that on a lot of people's favorite lists. Personally, I'm not a big, period kind of. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this movie.
Oh. I mean, I love The Shining. I love Clockwork Orange, but for this is my favorite Kubrick film. I'm not going to say I'm like huge into period movies, but there's something about this movie. It's just this gorgeous.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous, and it's very slow paced. And I'm not always on board with a slow paced film, but if a film can like wrap me up and pull me into its world, I'll be okay with it being slow and long. Like, this is one of those movies, even though it's long, I honestly wish this were longer. I could watch this movie all day if I had to. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to describe because it's not really about, there's not really one plot line. It's really just about this guy who's, he's really a failure, and he just fails upwards basically into high society. And he's not likable at all. And he's not likable in that roguish way. It's not like, we love to hate him. He's just kind of like this simpering jerk. But I love that the film is just about that. It's about this guy failing upward in this gorgeous painterly way. I love the way it was shot, where the cinematographer shot the whole thing using natural light, so every shot just looks almost like I don't know, supernatural in a way. It doesn't look like a normal movie.
Oh, for sure. Speaking of beautiful films, number 5 on your list is Terrence Malick's The New World. Why is this in your top 5 movies of all time?
Right. So this is my favorite Malick, and this is sort of like the last film he made that actually has a plot, where he like after this he went fully into his poetic, meandering sort of films. And I know people love some of those films, and I don't dislike them, but this for me is like the epitome of what he can do when he's actually telling a story, because it does have those those moments where it's very poetic and it's very abstract, but it also is about something. And this is just a gorgeous movie. It's 100% historically inaccurate. I'm not gonna argue for the case that any of this happened the way it's told in the story, but I love the way it unfolds. I love the performances. The ending of this film pretty much like destroys me emotionally. It's about, I don't know, if people don't know what it's about the story of Pocahontas and John Smith. Pretty much, and it almost follows like the same story as the Disney film, but it's done, not in the same way. But the ending of this film involves Pocahontas coming from her home, in America to England, and just the way the film presents that with her out of her element in this, whole new world, it like takes my breath away.
Number 4 on your list is a film that is definitely in my top 25. It's one of David Fincher's best, and that is Zodiac. So why is Zodiac your number 4?
Zodiac is another one of those films I could watch it over and over again. It's very meticulous. It's very detailed. Fincher is obviously, he's a very obsessive filmmaker, and I think this is his best film because it's about obsession. Like, of all his films, this is the one that deals so directly with obsession. And I like it because it was presented as this sort of serial killer thriller. I remember when this came out, there was a lot of disinterest in it because people didn't realize what it was. Like, it was sold, David Fincher, the director of Seven, he's making another serial killer movie, but that's not really what this is. This is more like, it's like All the President's Men, but it has a serial killer. And I like that. I like that it stops being a serial killer movie. Like, it's like an almost 3-hour movie. And I'd say after the first hour, it stops even being about a serial killer. And it's more about one guy played by Jake Gyllenhaal, his obsession with trying to figure out who the killer was. And I like that it sticks really true to the facts. Like, it doesn't subvert them. It doesn't go for like a happy sort of ending. It sort of ends on this note that, even if Jake Gyllenhaal's character may have figured out who the killer was, the killer still got away with it. And, there's no real resolution there. There's no catharsis, if you will.
Do you think that's why this might not be one of the most well-regarded David Fincher movies? Like, I feel like I don't hear a lot of people talking about this one as their favorite David Fincher, but I think it probably is his best movie as a whole.
I agree. I don't think he's yet to top this. And I do think that it's a hard sell because you can't really sell it as a thriller. You can't really sell it even as a mystery because even though it has mystery elements in it, the mystery isn't really what it's about. It's about the obsession with the mystery, and it's hard to sell that to the average moviegoer because you can't really package that. You can't really say, oh, this is a movie about a guy obsessed with something. Like, no one, you need to give them someone, you need to give the audience more than that. So it's hard to sell them on that. Plus it's long. People don't like, 3 hour, unless it's like a superhero movie, they can sort of get on board with that. But a movie like this, it's like a drama. People don't really want to sit through nearly 3 hours of that. Some people, I do. I'll sit through that if it's good, but some people don't go for that.
And I love how Fincher, even though it's not a superhero movie, it's not, this huge budget epic, but it has a lot of hidden CG. And I know Fincher released like this behind the scenes, maybe it was a featurette or doc on the DVD Blu-ray that kind of goes to show, all the work that got done with, computer generated backgrounds and, cameras that are completely CG that you wouldn't expect. It's just a masterwork of art, of invisible, effects.
Right. I love that. I love movies where, even though this is like an effects heavy film, but you wouldn't really know it unless you watched those special features. So I love that. I love that Fincher is able to employ those techniques in a not really showy way. Yeah. Even though he is sometimes like a showy director, he does it in this very subtle sort of way.
If you haven't seen this movie, I would say see it. If you have seen this movie and haven't seen that documentary, go find it. Put your DVD in the old player and check it out because it will give you a new appreciation of just how much work was put into that film. Number 3 on your list, Brian De Palma's Blowout. You open with the sentence that Brian De Palma's Blowout is cinema.
Yes. So one strange thing I've discovered ever since I've been, started covering movies and joined the film Twitter bubble is some people seem to not really realize that movies are a visual medium, which it sounds bizarre that people don't realize that, but they don't. And like movies, I see a lot of movies. I'm sure you see a lot of movies. We all see a lot of movies, and I've become sort of jaded to like point and shoot films where a director doesn't really realize he's directing a movie. Like he'll set up they'll set up their camera, they'll point and shoot, and that's it. Medium shots cutting back and forth between people. Like a lot of indie movies do this now, where there's no. Sorry,
I'm going to say something that is probably going to get a lot of people pissed off at me, but I really love the early work of Darren Aronofsky and Paul Thomas Anderson more so than their later work because it is so heavy on style and so heavy on visuals, and I feel like they have cut down on that and have kind of gone minimalistic in their approaches, and I kind of wish we would return to the days of the more stylish versions of those filmmakers. But yeah, go on.
No, I agree. I mean, sometimes there is such a thing as like too much style, like say, Michael Bay, where it's almost hitting you over the head. But De Palma, he's one of my favorite filmmakers because he never succumbs to that point and shoot sort of way. He always realizes that he's making a movie, and otherwise, the way I look at it is if you're not going to make your movie look like a movie, it really shouldn't be a movie. Go direct a play. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're putting it up on the screen, I want you to, do something. You have to impress me in some way. And De Palma always like pulls out all the stops. And I think Blowout is the best example of him working with a good script, because sometimes he'll do, great style, terrible script. Whereas Blowout has a really tight, concise script. It's got great performances. John Travolta is really good in this. This is probably like his best performance of his career in this movie.
This might be another film that people haven't seen. So can you explain what Blowout is about?
Right. So John Travolta, he's a movie Foley artist. He records sounds for very low budget, cheap horror movies, basically. And one night he's out recording nature sounds. He's at a park and he's recording the sounds. And he becomes an ear witness to a murder. He audibly records a car driving off a bridge into a lake. And the car was driven by a presidential candidate. And it turns out that this was actually a presidential, or not presidential, but a political assassination. So there was a woman in the car with the candidate, and Travolta was able to save her, but not the driver or the candidate. And so the rest of the movie is Travolta trying to basically piece together the crime and figure out who the assassin is. And I don't want to say more because it'll give it away. But
so why is this your favorite De Palma film?
I mean, I just love this movie. It's so well made. It's so tense. It's really twisted. Like I don't want to give away the ending, but it ends on this incredibly bleak note, and it's done in this almost comedic way about how bleak it is. And I don't always like a bleak ending, but it works really well on this. It was shot all over Philadelphia, and I'm from Philadelphia, so something about that really, like, I want to call it hometown pride, because I don't, I'm not like super into Philadelphia, but just like the way it shows you all these locations that I know exactly where they are. There's something about that really appeals to me.
I think everybody has that a little bit. I'm from Massachusetts, just out of Boston, in a little town called Natick that has a mall. Nothing's been shot in Natick, but actually a little piece of that Jason Reitman movie with what was it? Not Young Adult, the one after Young Adult. But anyways, no one cares about that. But whenever a movie is shot in Boston, there is a certain pride in seeing a piece of you kind of on screen.
Right.
And De Palma, I also want to say this. I've been a long-time fan of one-take, long tracking shots. And Brian De Palma is one of the first filmmakers that would really... I want to say make use, but almost abuse that technique. And nowadays with digital filmmaking and the fact that you're not burning money having film running through your camera lens, and you don't need all that expensive, as much expensive lights and stuff like that. You see now Netflix TV shows, everyone's doing like a tracking shot and stuff. But De Palma was the master before that was a thing.
Right.
Yeah. Number 2 on your list is definitely in my top 10, and that is a Steven Spielberg film. Which one?
This is E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial. One of the struggles I had with this list was I wanted to keep it one film from each director. I didn't want to have multiple films from one director, and I could have filled up this list with a dozen Spielberg films, because Spielberg is just one of my favorite filmmakers. He's one of the first people, when I was a kid, I realized what a director was from Spielberg. But of all his films, this is the one that gets to me the most. I mean, I love Jaws, but Jaws doesn't get to me on like an emotional level. Whereas this film, even now, as I get older and more jaded and more bitter, this film still speaks to me. I mean, the scene with, where E.T. makes the kids are trying to outrun the government agents, and all the bikes take off at once, and John Williams' score kicks in. Just even like thinking about that now still just gives me like chills. That's like, that to me is like movie magic. Like it's
emotion in a bottle. It's yeah. And I'm glad to hear that you're willing to put a film like this high up in your list, because I feel like a lot of film nerds have kind of taken a cynical eye to Steven Spielberg. I mean, I know that. I don't know. I just feel like he is. I mean, I guess maybe in the public realm, he is still the biggest director of all time. But I feel like in this film Twitter bubble, he's kind of been taken down a couple notches. And I still think he's a master. And some of these films are it's my childhood on film, even though I never, obviously had an alien or took off on bikes over the moon. It captures it.
It's true. I hate that in that, like you said, that film Twitter genre where people just sort of think they're sort of above Spielberg. And I hate that because, yes, he hasn't always made, deep intellectual movies, although I'd argue in like the 21st century his films have only gotten deeper and darker, but he understands like the language of cinema better than pretty much every director working right now. Like very few directors know how to tell a story just with visuals the way he does. And so I feel like if you want to act like you're above Steven Spielberg, you're like kidding yourself, because he knows exactly what he's doing and he does it better than pretty much anyone.
One filmmaker we haven't mentioned until right now is Martin Scorsese. And if you're going to pick any Scorsese film, it better be Goodfellas. And it is. So why is Goodfellas your number one film of all time?
Right. So, I say in the list that, I had watched, I'd gotten into films at a very young age, but up until this point, I saw Goodfellas probably when I was 7 or 8, which is probably too young to see Goodfellas. But
wait, did you? How did that happen?
So Goodfellas, my father was very Italian. He was very into all things Italian. So, and that included mob movies. And so, I'm sure that's a stereotype, but he was very into anything having to do with Italians. So basically, he sort of insisted I watch Goodfellas with him. So I did. And even at 7 or 8, whenever I saw it, it opened up this whole new world to me. Like, this was the first time I realized movies were more than just, moving pictures. There was something about this film, the way it moved, the way Scorsese combines, the music and the editing. And, there's that famous tracking shot where they go, through the basement of I think it's the Copacabana. They go through the basement and the camera just stays on it. And even now, many years later, I watch that particular scene, and it blows me away. Even after seeing so many other films do tracking shots like that, it's incredible, the logistics of it, because the camera's always moving. It's always going down these halls, and it's incredible. And it's just a great movie overall.
I know it should be said that tracking shot is storytelling. Like it's all storytelling. Like that's not just style for style's sake. It tells you so many things about, this person, this situation, and the power of being a gangster in that era.
Exactly. Like a lot of movies now, they'll do tracking shots, and you can tell they're just doing it to be like, look at how cool this tracking shot is. Whereas Scorsese is actually using it for a reason. And I don't know, it's not just the tracking shot. It's just everything in this movie clicks with me so well. And like I said, this was like the first time I realized what, the art of movie making was when I saw this film when I was 7 or 8.
You said your father showed you a lot of mob movies. Why did you become attracted to? Why did you choose this over? I'm sure he showed you the Godfather Trilogy or Godfather films.
He did. I can't really put my finger on it, but this is the one that always stood out to me the most. I mean, The Godfather is a great movie. Godfather 2 is a great movie. Godfather 3 is okay. But this is the one that really just clicked with me.
We need to find the person that thinks Godfather 3 is the best movie of that trilogy and have them write an unpopular opinion post for
I'm sure someone out there probably likes it. I don't think it's as bad as some people say it is. It's not like, a terrible movie. It's not as good as the first two. Yes,
and it features Sofia Coppola as one of the main characters of the film.
And she's really, really bad in the movie. Yes. She's a great director, not such a great actress. So,
for sure. Well, you can read all of Chris's entries, his top 15 on slashfilm.com. I will link it in the show notes. But it is, if you haven't seen any of these films, or if there are films in this list that you have not seen, please add them to your watch list.
Yes.
This is good. This is a good diet for any film fanatic, even if these movies might not make your top 15. Oh no, hold on a second. My girlfriend ordered an iPhone 8 and someone's at the door. I'll be back.
Okay.
Okay, I am back.
Okay.
iPhone signed for. So now she has her iPhone. That's good.
Nice.
I should also mention before we go that yesterday I was in a rush to leave to go to this Knott's Scary Farm event, and I poorly edited the podcast, and there was a little bit of a hiccup where people were talking over each other, and it was totally my fault. We published it to the feed, and 30 minutes into driving to Orange County, California, I got a bunch of tweets and emails alerting to me of this problem, and thankfully this iOS 11 update came out this week, and on my phone I was able to access the audio files recorded for the podcast and email them to Ben, who is still at home, and he was able to edit them and put up the right podcast. So only about 500 people got to hear this horribly edited version of the podcast, but Apple did save it, and I apologize to the 500 people, but the majority of the listeners heard the correct podcast yesterday.
Nice.
Yes. Anyways, Chris, where can we find more of your work online?
Well, I'm should be every day at slashfilm.com, and I'm out there. Just look for me on Twitter. Just search Chris Evangelista. You'll find me. And
are you the only person with that name?
Probably not on the planet. I'm sure there's at least one other one out there right there. But
no, I'm always curious because there's none other on like Facebook or something. Probably, I would assume.
Not that I know of.
No.
I think there actually is like a saxophonist who has the same name as me. But so if you find someone who's a saxophonist, that's not me. I'm the other Chris Evangelista.
Well, yes, you can find me at /film on Twitter. You can find all of my work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast published every weekday on iTunes, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps. Subscribe, tell your friends, rate and review, help spread the word because we're doing this for free. We're actually not even doing this for free. We're losing hundreds of dollars a week rather, doing this because we're paying people to do this and there's no ad revenue. We look forward to one day monetizing this podcast, but probably not for a year or so. So we appreciate you listening. We appreciate all the emails you've been sending to Peter at slashfilm.com, and we hope you have enjoyed this, and we'll see you tomorrow.